go this way. Welcome to the way to Houston.
Absolutely.
Sidekicks to the left. So here we go in 3, 2, 1. Let's do this where we can get the signage behind you. In 3, 2, 1. Check those out, make sure those are good, okay? You bet. So the fish came with the building. It's not a taxidermy project. It's made out of styrofoam. But it was too long, and it was missing the lower jaw, it was missing the eye, and it was missing the tail. So my daughter and I, whom you met up front, Miss Abby, we cut out 3 inches from the center of fiberglassed it back together, added the jaw, added the tail, and then she made the fins, she made the eye, and then dotted all of those dots by hand, and then we clear coated it. And I thought she did a really nice job. And then in addition, my wife, who is a librarian, she took a screen grab from the show and she sourced all 130 books, and we played around with Photoshop to create these faux boxes of books in order to make it lightweight enough for the door to open and close. Yeah. And the fabric wallpaper came from England, so that was tough to source out. And all of the trim took forever to miter out every single joint, and we have a really good carpenter that helped us out with all of that. So a lot of work. Yeah. And as you folks heard when you first came in, the 4 copies over there are the digital copies of the original handwritten music that Nelson Riddle wrote of the Batman animated titles. So that, and that was a really nice coup from the Songbook Foundation and Music Museum in Indianapolis. It's technically in Carmel, and it's pretty sweet that they were willing to do that for us. And we were happy to give them credit, of course. Now, this wall didn't exist on the TV show because as a movie set, that's where the crew was located, right? So the desk was located about where the wall is. So Bruce and Dick would rush through, go straight to the desk, take the call, and then rush from there to the bat poles to slide down.
Have you seen any of that? Yeah, I've watched it before. Okay.
I need to find out why my Raspberry Pi is not operating. That's what I was doing when those folks came. Oh. So I haven't had a chance to dive back into it, but I think I see what I need to do now. So I know it'll be, well, let's go to work.
I have something exactly like that little desk thing right there.
Yeah.
It's upstairs in my attic.
Oh, okay.
So we'll go there, and there it is. Yep. What was that? Isn't that it? So this is from the pilot episode of the Riddler, of course, is the villain. The pilot was shot at Fox, so it was a completely different set than what was used throughout first season. There was no trim around the Batpole Passage, for instance. Mm-hmm. And then you see it in the Penguin episode, which is next up here. And this is the actual set that remained throughout all the first season. And directors would modify the location of items, like the Shakespeare bust would move around, the Batphone would move around the desk, and even the items in the background would change from episode to episode, where were the chairs, things like that. Trivia question, pop quiz. What is the spinny thing that goes into the titles? What is that? Has anybody, have you ever freeze framed that to see what it is?
I always thought it was a bat symbol.
It's not the bat symbol. They sometimes did the bat symbol on top of it as a transition.
Comic books.
That's a different one.
What's been behind the
Comic
Oh,
books.
It was the start button with the label from the dashboard. Oh. Remember that the start button really wasn't the start button, it was a hinged plate over top the anti-theft activator. And they would bring that down, a bad guy would jump in the car thinking it was the start button in it, and the fireworks would shoot out of the triple rocket tubes. And so isn't that amusing?
The other thing I noticed is from the pilot to the second and forward, the police administration got smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
So it's just Gordon and O'Hara.
Right, as the budget cuts came in.
Because the first episode had like 8 police officers.
Inspector Bash.
Right.
Yes, Commissioner. We'll be right there. To the back holes.
And I never noticed that the Bruce's was thicker than Dick's.
Yeah, I'm sure that there was no in joke in the art department about that. And unlike what Adam Westenberg Ward saw when they slid down the poles, ours actually goes down to the Batcave.
And we'll see that later in the
See
tour.
that downstairs, you bet. So there was an episode where the Joker broke into the Wayne Manor study. He accessed the Shakespeare bust, flipped the switch. Thankfully, Alfred had all of the labeling taken down so we could repaint the shaft. But Joker slid down the bat pole, and Alfred, as a quick thinker, dropped the panel and hit the up button on the emergency bat pole elevator, which brought the compressed steam bat pole lift pad up, and Joker did not make it all the way down to the Batcave, thankfully. But then, as part of the shenanigans, they hit the down button and sent Joker back down and up and down several times. And Joker kept calling it a dumbwaiter, so isn't that entertaining?
So was it Joker or Riddler?
Joker.
Joker. And do you know what episode that was? 'Cause I don't remember, but it sounds fascinating.
Pop goes the Joker, flop
Okay,
goes the Joker.
Okay, so that tells me which one.
Flop goes the Joker. So it's the one with where he's kidnaps the millionaires that want to become artists. And Baby Jane.
Who's that? You.
Me.
Yeah. And so the phone, you press the button, and can I look at the inside the?
Sure. So.
That's great. I noticed that dial before. But he doesn't push it, he just turns it to what?
It turns just like that.
I have some other
So this is the back line. This is based on the actual trick they used in the show, where they would walk on a platform and they would tilt the camera sideways, and it would make it look like they're climbing a building. And then in this case, we have a couple of screen use things. This jacket was used in season 3, episode 4 of the 66 Batman series, and this shirt was used by Riddler in the 2003 movie Return to the Batcave. And since you have a photo pass, if you want to get on the back climb wall, you can. When I press the down button, jump in the middle, it's not going to do that. It will stop.
Ohio. This costume was, yeah, these are all replicas. This costume was made by Troy Manus over in Dayton, Ohio, and it's on loan to the museum. The Catwoman statue was originally at the Hollywood Museum, the temporary exhibit, and I was able to buy that from Greg Mario and his team that made it, and they're the ones that
Wait a
made
minute,
these.
no offense, but as a young man watching that program, I can tell you right now, that belt's too high.
It is. Yes. And it's too small. It won't allow me to bring it down onto her hips. You're correct.
That was some of the 1960s sexiest outfits
Yes.
that you could wear.
Now you get to go back behind the stanchions with your photo pass to have photos taken with each of these statues. So don't hesitate to make that happen.
Oh, thank you.
So the total dehydrator from the Batman.
Yeah.
That's a replica also, but it was so good that Burt Ward told the guy that made it that it was the original, and he said, no, I built it. No, it's got to be the right from the show because it looks exactly like it was. So it's signed by Adam and Burt. That's a tribute to my father over there in the corner.
Yes, I remember that from the video. Yes.
Possible. Depending on how you count the three-parter where both of them appeared. He did develop, as was mentioned, the iconic quack, 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 the kind of a duck type sound to cover up the smoking. He was coughing from smoking. He had quit smoking 10 years earlier, and he needed something to make that work. And it became such a part of his character that if the scriptwriters couldn't think of something to say, they would have him make the whack, whack type sound. And Frank Gorshin is next, is the Riddler, and he was the only one nominated for an Emmy from the Batman TV show, but rightfully so. He really set the stage for how the villains should be played. Over the top, manic, and fun, and crazy. Poor John Astin, a great actor who ended up replacing Frank in the second season when they were having negotiation issues with salary, Frank and William Dozier. So John Astin steps into the role, but John's a great actor, but he just could not stand up to the performance that Frank had put together. And then the Latin lover, Cesar Romero, down here. Cesar refused to shave his trademark mustache, and they used white makeup across it, and our wonderful statue makers, Greg Mario and his team out of New York, they even replicated the mustache across there. If you're at the right angle and you look at these characters, they really did such an amazing job with the eyes in particular. They look real, like they should. The eyes should be following you as they walk along. Eventually, Mr. Mad Hatter will have his own head, and so will Mr. Freeze. So we're waiting on those to come in. We've got a tribute over here to my father, without whom none of this would have been possible. He's the one who allowed 5 crazy 17-year-olds to build a Batmobile in his garage. And he was a school administrator. He started the Longcliffe School at the State Hospital in 1962. He was the first assistant principal at Landis Elementary School, was in charge of budgets like Chapter 1. A big grant from school administration. Had the Parents Without Partners many times, and just an overall great guy. So, up above you are the villains. So the 4 corners are the main villains, the 7 in the center are the more popular secondary ones, and then the surrounding ones are the lesser known ones. Which ones do you recognize?
Climb a building. You're like, the ground is that wall.
appreciating you and your work. This is what it's all about. This is how it's looked at.
Well, you've got a real treasure, and I appreciate it. I think having a collectible or 1,000 is a little way to become closer to the show you love, with the people involved.
In the corner there.
Or over here,
Yeah.
then something takes over. And I think it becomes almost obsessive, if I may. The collections get larger. In Rob's case, the collection's gotten smarter.
Recognize that 45 over there in the corner?
Yes.
It's a little song called Miranda.
If you tell someone you're a Batman collector, when you start talking about classic series, that really sets you apart as a purist. And you know that when you talk to someone who collects 1966 classic Batman, you're saying, this guy's a purist. This guy he was there from the very beginning.
What's this guy?
That's the Batplane. That poster on the wall there, that's an actual screen-used poster from when you ran for mayor against the Penguin right there. You signed it for me.
You know, Ralph, I've never seen this.
Yeah, that's a nice vacuum form piece. That's a little more recent, but it looked good there and it looks good with the lights. But I mean, just so many different items.
Why would somebody want a Batmobile? It really brings us closer to our fandom. It brings us closer to the original concepts. We want to be part of it, and that's so important to be part of it.
You see, Ralph, the cowl still fits.
Does?
Like so many other things that I No, not the tights.
You don't put the tights on?
Not the tights, no.
Were you aware of how much stuff was being sold when you were doing the show?
Not really.
You were probably too busy working, right?
Well, I would have asked for more money.
I think any collector has to decide what the focus of his collection is going to be.
I've got some of the Bruce Wayne duds and Batman costuming. Yeah, I have quite a few goodies, but nothing like Ralph's.
Speaking of cowls,
Give me that sucker.
I know, let's see if the rumors are true.
I'll tell you. Is there a crack? Salvage. What do you think, Ralph?
So fast.
Right? Huh? Huh?
This is so awesome.
Excuse me.
You're Batman in my Batman.
Wait a minute. What do I see in the sky? Ah.
I was 2 years old in 1967. I fell in love with the TV show, the music, the action, the color, but especially with the car. When that flamethrower shot off and the Batmobile sped down the Batcave, came around that hairpin turn, it was just an amazing, indelible impression.
Well, Batmobile was probably the first car that the masses saw like that. I mean, it was really before the muscle cars and stuff.
I'm a car guy. I collect cars in real life. So for me, it's all about the Batmobile. It's all about the car because back in '66, there was nothing like it on the road.
But the Batmobile, it had missile launchers in it. It had fire coming out of the back of it. It had gadgets that you could relate to, like a parachute. You could just, and it was black and shiny. It looked really fast. And it came out of the Batcave and it was open on top.
It's like this little microcosm of justice. I mean, when Batman's in that, nothing can touch him. He can take his little brand of justice anywhere in the streets of Gotham. So with me, it's all about the Batmobile.
I was 11 years old when I saw my first Batmobile in person, the number 4 dragster Ferris-built Batmobile, and that's what cemented that someday I was going to build my own car. I was 17 years old when we did. 4 of the crazy 17-year-olds and I took apart an old 1974 Monte Carlo and turned that into our very first Batmobile. We're sitting here at the Fiberglass Freak shop, and here in this very building is where we build these wonderful 1966 Batmobile replicas. One of the neat things about the '66 Batmobile versus the movie Batmobiles is that it was based on a real car, and it's a drivable vehicle. It's not a Hollywood prop. The original Batmobile was made on a 1955 Lincoln Futura concept car. There was only one that was ever built, and it's the car that actually became the Batmobile. George Barris only had about 3 or 4 weeks to find a car and turn it into the Batmobile, and it's very fortunate he had the Futura on hand to be able to do that. There's only about a 10 or 15% wings onto the doors, he brought the hood scoop down the nose of the car, added the scallops on the fins, removed the center canopy, and then added all of those back gadgets. And because of that, I think that that's one of the reasons why it has such incredible appeal. It's so retro that it's futuristic. There were no blueprints for the Batmobile. There was hardly anything. Everything about the Lincoln Futura concept car was burned up in the Fort Rotunda fire in 1962. I had 5 photos of the number 4 car, and I had 1 picture of the number 1 car in the Corgi Batmobile, and that was it, that we used to build our first car. Now since then, of course, I've got about 20 gigabytes of data on the Batmobile, and I've looked at all of the various replicas and have been able to measure the number 1. I interviewed George Barris while I was sitting in the car, and it's the car that actually became the Batmobile. George Barris only had about 3 or 4 weeks to find a car and turn it into the Batmobile. And it's very fortunate he had the Futura on hand to be able to do that. There's only about a 10 or 15% change if you look at the photos of the Futura, but those were significant. He brought the wings onto the doors, he brought the hood scoop down the nose of the car, added the scallops on the fins, removed the center canopy, and then added all of those back gadgets. And because of that, I think that that's one of the reasons why it has such incredible appeal. It's so retro that it's futuristic.
The Joker one is really hard to get because apparently we only sold a special set from Sears. And then had to order for it for Christmas in the wish book. And that's when you got the Joker, otherwise you couldn't get it.
It was all cardboard. It was this pop-up puzzle theater. It was only available through a catalog back in the 60s. And it came with 3 puppets. Batman, Robin, and a Joker. And the Joker was only available in this set. We just sold it for $6,000.
You're crazy. Looking at the Joker. This guy is nefarious.
And the cool thing was, the guy came in and he had this twinkle in his eye, like a little 12-year-old. He's like, I've been looking for this set for 30 years.
That initial conquest when you get those things, I mean, that's the addiction. That's why we keep going.
This item, the touch system on the Batmobile, we also have the start button with the hinge label. Everything is replicated just like it was on the original car. And on our far right, this is the detectoscope, also known as the Robin Boy hostage finder. It takes a lot of work to get these 7-foot fins perfectly smooth so that we can get the beautiful paint job on them that people are expecting. We also have the triple rocket tubes, and sometimes we have cannons that fire confetti out of them, bat-shaped confetti. Back here we have the rear antenna, which is exactly what George Barris used back in the 60s to make the Batmobile. Of course, we have the diesel parachute packs that everybody remembers from this show. And our license plate on the back of it has 2F3567, and naturally we have the working flamethrower. We live in a tactile world. Every button, every knob, every T-handle piece, every single part of the Batmobile has to have some kind of a function because of the world we live in. That's what we like to have, is a functioning part of a vehicle. And it ties in along with everything else that we like to play with our toys. And even as adults, we continue to collect all of these wonderful items. Randy, I'm headed downstairs for you. Sorry.
Magnificent.
They made multiple versions of an Arctic Batman and so on. So I've got some of those on display over here. But
Arctic Batman had like a fur-lined cloak.
No. About half of my stuff is on collections.
That was very like
and then also, this was and Batman Forever in '95. They're quite a few variants of those costumes too. Yeah. That particular balance. But So that will probably never happen ever again. The top middle one is Bat 1, which you'll see in the Batcave in just a few minutes. The top left one, the guy was suffering from leukemia, was in the hospital and couldn't take possession of his car yet. The bottom left one was our first licensed car, number 17. It was going to go to Arizona in 3 days. And then the middle one is our 15th car. That one, the guy was in the middle of a divorce and he could not take possession of it just yet. Afraid that she might cut it in half, I guess. And then the car facing away was our 9th car, and I was helping broker the sale for it. And I said, "What's the condition?" "Oh, it's about like it was when it arrived." It was not. It was scratched and scraped up and damaged. Every single quarter panel needed to be repainted on the entire car. So it was an overall paint job. But
Any of the cars that you guys have made are in any other museums or any other notable places?
not that I knew. Scott Sebring from LA. And that's our 4th Batmobile. I took the photo inside the photo tent at Barrett Jackson right before it was sold. And I find it on t-shirts, I find it on hats, posters, mouse pads, cups, you name it. So that was entertaining.
It sounds like you should sell hats and posters and that.
And then the last bigger picture is 2 Batmobiles on the highway. We were shooting a video called Holding Double Vision, and that was the opening of the Hoosier Heartland east of town from here. That was a blast. 1 Batmobile on the highway is enough to cause all kinds of commotion. 2 is incredible. It was a blast. Recent editions. Behind me, my first celebrity was Burt Ward. In 1972, Burt came right here to Logansport. He was as Burt Ward at 5 of the elementary schools doing a bicycle safety awareness tour, and then he was at the Chrysler dealership as Robin signing autographs. I got to work with Burt once, but I've met him probably a dozen times over the years. He recognizes me and we always have a blast. He gave me some advice about Warner Brothers. Adam I worked with twice, but you know, I'm amazed these guys remember me at all because they would see 1,000 people a weekend or more. Yeah. But Adam would say, "I know you did not pilfer the rocks from the cave. A friend of mine from Brazil, South America, pilfered those rocks and mailed them to me." And but it's just a tunnel. It was literally the exterior, and that was it. The interior naturally was a set in Culver Studios, stage 16. But that area has been used for hundreds of movies and TV shows. So if something looks familiar to you, the reason is it's probably in the background of a MASH episode, or a Western, or any other things. Wonder Woman. You name it, if it was probably shot. Statues are upstairs.
Look at me.
Don't touch the statues, okay?
Look at me.
Knock it out of your way for a photo, and I'm crossing into your frame. There you go.
Stand in front of Batman and Robin. Oh,
What we would call creepily in the Star Wars universe means it's an extra detail that had no function whatsoever, but it looks cool, and it was never labeled, which is odd in the Batcave. Never labeled.
It's a doohickey.
Right, it's a doohickey. Right. So the Bat Shield was autographed by Burt Ward. It was a replica prop made by a buddy of mine down in Nashville. Did you ever talk about that?
He does cosplay. I mentioned he does the cosplay from here for Robin. Yeah.
You bet. And when Burt Ward got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, he asked Alex to be his Robin for that. It's the Batmobile.
See, as I came down
So the 1/6 scale Jazz Inc. Batmobile is from the Netherlands. And this is the most accurate replica Batmobile model that's ever been made. Super rare. They only produced a limited number that were on pre-order. And if you were lucky to get one of the ones after that, the price tags have shot up to about $5,000 now on eBay. If you're lucky, you might be able to find somebody selling it for about the same price they paid for it, which is about $1,500.
Wait a minute. I don't remember that.
Right?
Sticking out? Yeah.
The cable cutter blade. If you had one of the Corgi Batmobiles that had that little pop-out blade, right? You press the Batbeam button and it popped out. We made up story after story after story of the cable cutter blade. It must have been used on this show like this or like that. And no, it was never used on the show at all. In fact, it was removed about halfway through the first season. Why was it removed? This part of the blade, it's not clear, by the way, it's polished aluminum, stuck out of the car even when it was retracted. So people were scraping their shins on it when walking past the Batmobile. So they had to remove it. The C channel that it slid on is still inside the car even today.
So that's real blood at the tip, huh?
So the upper pictures of the car when it was unfinished, so it's in black primer on the far left, and then this picture here, and that's when Corgi saw it the first time. So when you hear about a matte black little Corgi Batmobile, the reason it was matte black is they thought it was going to remain matte. They didn't know that it was going to be glossy, and it was, of course, later painted gloss. That there's a huge debate over what color was the striping of the Batmobile, because everybody thought that it photographed red. So why in the world would it be a super bright orange if it was red? Well, color television was brand spanking new, and the colors were not always exactly the same. They had troubles with Cesar Romero's wig showing up green. It kept showing up red when they would photograph it. So what they did was they used a neon poster material, and it starts off looking about like the wheel bats, but then over time it fades, like you see on the top of these fins and on the back of the car, to the base coat, which is white. So they repaint the striping of the Batmobile about 3 times throughout the course of the 2.5 years that they were making this show.
When you customize, do you have someone ask for red instead of orange?
We offer either one.
Okay.
99% of our customers go for the Mind's Eye Torch Red instead.
That's what I would do.
It's because it doesn't fade like this does. This says right on the can, do not put in direct sunlight. I'm like, it's a car. What are you supposed to do with that? This is my first Batmobile built when I was 17 years old. 5 crazy kids in my dad's garage, which was an old carriage barn in the west side of town. No automotive experience, no automotive tools. We didn't even own an air compressor when we started, if that tells you how naive we were about the process. If we had known how hard it was going to be, I doubt we would have done it, because it was much more difficult. But we had sewn costumes, we had built sets, we had made props. Without how hard could it be to build a car? Way in over our heads. But we had plenty of willpower. So that was the answer.
Do you have some experience with fiberglass?
No. None. So, in fact, I had a fiberglass guy that had made some of those the derby cars that go down hills back in the day. They stopped doing it because somebody got hurt, but he had built these wooden soapbox derby cars, covered them with 2 or 3 layers of glass. I thought he was going to be fiberglassing the Batmobile and I was going to be assisting him. He came in, he shows me how to mix the resin, you put the hardener in, you mix it up, you brush that on, you put your piece of fiberglass matting down, and you stipple the top of that. You made a 6-inch by 6-inch piece. He said, that's how you do it. And then he left. I'm like, what? He never came back.
So it's not like
cells from there.
So you don't make a mold and pour it into a mold.
Oh, that's the way it should be done. Yes.
Okay.
But back then, Now, this was built from the inside out as opposed to our professional cars, which are from the outside in. So you think about like an ice cube tray, and that's the way a mold works, is that it has to be tapered, about a 5-degree taper to be able to pop the part back out of it. But the Batmobile has so many undercuts that the mold is a 22-piece mold in order to be able to make it. There's a reason why Lincoln only made one Lincoln Futura, right? It's hard. Everything about the car was designed to be hard and get attention, get newspaper headlines, magazine headlines, and cover photos and things like that. So,
How long did it take you to make this?
about 2 summers.
6 months.
Yeah. When I would come home from college, I would tinker with it on breaks and weekends and things like that. But 2 summers.
Wow.
Your dad tolerated having a half-built Batmobile in his garage for a long time.
He was very kind, wasn't he?
How much does this differ to the ones that you make now?
Every single aspect is different. There's literally nothing that is the same. We learned a lot. We made every mistake in the world building this car. We used wood paneling for the fence. We used plywood for the top of it. And then all of that rotted out, as I said, upstairs from the inside out. And we had to tear off the back half of the car and redo it. So it's 3 feet tall, and having all 4 of the big tubes on it, and the tubes were about 4 foot in diameter. These are 2-foot diameter tubes. Super high voltage. Yes.
As I understand it, NBC wanted to pick up a 4th season, but ABC had already torn down the sets. If it hadn't been for that, they would have had a 4th season?
That is a rumor that has been flown around, but I think it's more of an urban legend.
Okay.
It came from one interview with Yvonne, but you've met Yvonne, you know that she was so sharp. I cannot imagine her making a mistake like that, because there was nothing in the trade papers, Hollywood Reporter or Variety, that they were ever going to consider picking up the show for a 4th season. And that would have been big news, especially back then, because it was so rare. I think there were only a handful of TV shows at that time that had ever moved from one network to another. I think it was a reporter that embellished.
Have you ever crossed paths with any of the people from the more recent eras of Batman?
No, I've not.
No.
I've talked with some of them on the phone.
Yeah.
So the guys that made the Tumbler, I had some great conversations with them. Them in the Batcave that made their way back and forth between the Jupiter 2 on Lost in Space and the Batcave. Now, in 1955, that was a real working computer, not this replica, but the ones on the set. They cost $250,000 in 1955, about $2.6 million in today's money, by the way. But by 65, they were surplus, they were junk, so they ended up in movie sets.
Yes.
And this is St. Louis backwards.
So that's the Mississippi River.
So sometimes it would be flipped around and they would just move the label, but no. But some of the times it was configured like this, sometimes it was the opposite side. And they shot through this, and like they drew the Mad Hatter's hat. And,
oh, that's awesome.
To create the pattern, like, oh, we know where he's going to strike next. And things like that. But I had the Batmobile tracking map one time. They changed the label and they had it lit up in a certain spot. So pretty cool. So this is a little bit smaller than what they have on the set. We've miniaturized a handful of things here to make it work for our scale in here. The walls on the east and west here came like this. This is what they look like. But the north and south walls and the curved walls into the east wall, those we had to build. And we used chicken wire, then we covered every single square inch of the chicken wire with masking tape. We brought in one of those foam insulation companies and they sprayed the walls in about an hour and a half and made it. And I said, do not trim it off, leave it exactly as it is. And then we painted it 2 days later, and boom, the Batcave was here. It was amazing. Any questions? Anything I haven't covered in this room? The story of the Batmobile's origins are in this picture. So it started with a clay model of the 1955 Lincoln Futura in Detroit. Then it was sent to Ghia over in Italy, and they built it, and it was completed in '55. Then it was painted red in 1959. It was used in a movie called It Started With a Kiss with Debbie Reynolds, who is the mother of a famous star that passed away recently.
Carrie
Who would
Fisher.
that be? Yep, Carrie Fisher. Good job. And Glenn Ford, who happened to be Pa Kent in the 1978 Superman movie. So there's another
that's
tie-in
cool.
for us, right? And the car was in the primer, black primer with white airbrush striping, so that the producers could look at it and see whether or not that's where they wanted the striping. And then they painted it gloss black with the super bright red-orange striping that I mentioned earlier for the finished car. And there were different times when they would use a dull coat on it, spray to knock down reflections, or they would put a powder on it to knock down reflections. There's one time we'll have a display that we talked about the music from the show, how it changed over the years, and from the Batman movies and mine as well, the set construction. So we'll get into different. That was a replica of the Batgirl cycle that was made by my painter of the Batmobiles, Ed Merrill. He has sold 4 or 5 of these now. But this is the very first one, so it's really a nice coup for us to have that here.
So you make these?
I don't.
Oh, you don't?
He does. I'm licensed by DC and Warner Brothers. I'm not allowed to make any other vehicle. I was, however, a consultant for him, and I will readily admit to that. But no, I'm not involved with
So it's a motorcycle as opposed to a Vespa?
It's a Yamaha motorcycle.
Okay.
And he used the exact year, which was a '67.
Wow.
And then this is a replica of Yvonne's costume. They did a pretty nice job on her face. She's a little bit too tall, but that's okay. We'll take it. And this crazy thing. This is a replica sculpture of the 1955 Lincoln Futura. There was a guy that loves to build replicas of concept cars, so he used professional lofting techniques, which means every 12 inches there's a board that goes all the way across, and you sculpt it on top of it. Some areas are 4 inches thick, other areas are paper thin. And once, as a buck for a mold, once the mold was made, he let the buck sit outside of the woods for 12 years. It was falling apart. It was, did that scare you? That's the front door closing. It's an old door. So there are fissures in the fins. The rear end was falling off. It was held on only by a rope. There was a tree growing up through one section of it. Really rough. But I bought it on eBay. $2,125.
Really?
This became the source of our Batmobile bodies. We started with this, fixed it up, popped the Futura mold, then I used an opaque project tents. You get to see you folks were asking about the center canopy, and you get to see the color picture up top there at the center canopy open and what that was like.
Oh, but he just went the bottom.
So pivoted on the corner of the rear windshield.
Was it able to be driven that way? Yeah, I was gonna say.
Now I understand the safety device. Once that goes up, you can't.
When the doors open, it stayed up. When the doors closed, it would come down automatically. There was a switch inside also.
I mean, look at it. I'm sitting in that thing. You couldn't be very tall.
Correct. The Batmobile is not a one-size-fits-all vehicle. when King's Hut was stole the Batmobile and Victor Bruno was sitting in it, they had to remove the seat from it.
Oh,
So he was
that's
sitting
fun.
on the floor, and he was still pretty. Now,
So what happened to the? Why did the Futura get canceled?
what?
Why did it get canceled? Why was it not put in
It was
production?
never meant to go into production.
Oh, it wasn't.
No. So yeah, the whole story of the Futura was that they wanted headlines. At the time,
It was a gimmick.
GM with Cadillac was kicking their butts at Lincoln. They needed something to get the attention of people, so that's why they created the Futura. There were no windshield wipers, right? I mean, it was never going to be a drivable car.
No.
It was not something that was ever going to be produced, but was still a laboratory on wheels. And a lot of the interior components made it onto the 56 Lincoln Premier, made it into the 58 Edsel, and made it into the 58 Mark II, the Lincoln Mark IIs. So a lot of it was used, but none of it was used exactly as it was on the Futura.
But yours has windshield wipers,
Yeah.
and it
No,
gets. But
It's a compound curve. There's no.
that's why I was wondering. I was wondering how you conquered that. So it's not street ready or street.
So aside from that, it is.
Okay.
If a BMV or a DMV would happen to be a stickler for one of our customers, we do have a clamp-on Model A windshield wiper that can be used, and it does suffice for the inspection. Because they know that nobody is saying is going to drive their Batmobile in the rain intentionally ever.
Well, no, because it doesn't have a centerpiece,
You know,
right?
cockpit car. I have been caught in probably 4 or 5 downpours, 3 that were really significant, and it's brutal. you park, there's nothing more you can do. If it's a light rain, it goes over the cockpit though. It was a beautiful design from that perspective.
Well, same thing with my like I was saying, my Corvette.
Yep.
With the T-top off, it had to be a heavy rain to get through, because when you're driving on the highway, it goes right over you.
Yep.
Now, your buyers, do they have to register those vehicles with the DMV?
Yes.
And they have to pass inspection?
They're titled in Indiana as 1955 Lincolns, and they get to, that's what Indiana is willing to do.
And they pass inspection?
It passes inspection because it only has to pass inspection for a 1955 vehicle instead of a modern day vehicle.
That's cool.
Yeah, there you go.
Score.
You got a lot of wins in your belt.
We've been very blessed, that's for sure. Back, but he was our upholsterer as well as a great friend. And he designed the seats and was able to make them accurately for us. And there he is sitting in the number 4, the actual number 4 dragster Batmobile that George Barris built while it was at our shop. The limited edition blue version. Now the reality of the color of the car was what's on the Revell model kit box. It didn't look like either of those two. It was a silver blue. So much like a Pontiac engine from the 1980s, some of the more modern cars have a pearlescent paint job. Pearlescent paint jobs were brand new back in '55. And supposedly they ground up thousands of fish scales to create that pearlescent view. But it didn't photograph well back in those days. They could never get a good picture of it. 14 cars, first 14 cars were in the... Sorry. Did you find it?